even if we're trying to do the opposite of being a victim by not talking about it and not paying attention to this, the effect that it has on us does make us more of a victim.
Time is money, so spend yours listening to me talk about things that are important to me and my people.
Time is money.
Hello and welcome to the 13th Minisode, and this week I'm going to go in quite heavy. I know, when don't I? But I am going to be speaking off the back of this most recent series. So Series 8, if you haven't listened already, I would highly recommend going to listen. I'm talking about the effect and the cause and everything to do with really sexual violence against ethnic women. And you might wonder, why ethnic women? Why not all women? And whilst I absolutely appreciate this is something that affects all women the world over, I feel like there are a lot of spaces which very rightly so do speak about sexual violence towards white women, and I don't feel like there's enough that speak about the reasons and the differences and the nuances with sexual violence towards ethnic women. So that's why all of Series 8 is dedicated to that. And as always on series, I'm joined with a wonderful expert guest, and that is Dr. Romani. So I would recommend going to listen to that series, and that might give you a bit more context to the conversation I'm about to have now on this minisode. But equally, you can just listen to this without listening to the series. Do what you want. Very quickly, before I kick off this episode, I just want to say a massive thank you to all the people who have actively subscribed, engaged, got in touch on the socials, TikTok and Instagram, now on YouTube as well, because as you can see, I'm recording these. They will get better each week as I go to different areas in my house and work out what's the best angle with the best lighting. But I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. Please carry on. Please share with a friend. Please slap this podcast in a group chat, whatever you can to just spread the word of Myers and Minutes. Okay, let's get into it. I was listening to a conversation on the Miss Me podcast with Lily Allen and Makita Oliver, and they were talking about watching programs which has a lot of sexual violence towards women, and how they were discussing if it is beneficial or not for us to watch and absorb that kind of media. And it did get me thinking, because I think all women live with a fear of being hurt, sexual violence or domestic violence or some kind of violence. We all live in that fear every day. And there are different levels of it. I know definitely for me when I was younger, I didn't think it was a thing. I didn't really think this would actually happen. So I was a lot more carefree. And then as I've got older and spoken to more of my friends, I am very much more cautious. Still not as cautious as some of my other friends, but way more cautious than I used to be. And I don't know whether watching things that include sexual violence towards women is making that fear worse or lessening it. But I think that unless the things we're watching are normalising the conversation around it, then it's not really helping, because it is just adding more things for us to be worried about. But at the same time, I do feel like a lot of the things that we watch now and a lot of the things that include these kind of themes do start the conversation and do normalise us talking about it, removing shame from this, and just in general getting us in a place where we're better at talking about this kind of stuff and not avoiding it. And obviously the more we talk about it, the harder it is for it to continue, because shame is removed and people are just more educated on the topic, and it's just all round better. But what I wanted to talk about specifically was the difference and the response, and the difference in response between when we see on TV sexual violence towards women and men. And I have spoken about this before, and as per usual, anytime you see anything that's like pro-women, it's deemed as you being a man-hating X, Y, and Z. And that's not the case at all. But I watched Baby Reindeer on Netflix, and I think I've spoken about this before, and I think it really, really did what it was supposed to do. I think it started a conversation for so many people, men and women, to start talking about things that have happened to them and how, you know, the shock that this happens, etc., etc. It definitely started conversations. However, there is a side of me that wonders if the show had the impact it had because it had a male at the forefront. I wonder if it's about a woman, we have a different response, or are we just more desensitized to seeing this on TV because we see it all the time against women and we don't really see it against men? I thought that was something I should bring to the group and ponder on, and then speak about how the effect of overconsumption of one group of people being constantly oppressed, hurt, violated, the effect that has versus when we see a group of people that are not usually in this position on TV or even in our minds having the same done to them, and then what the effect is. So I have no statistics for this, and I'm not saying I'm right, but just from my lived experience and what I see in the conversations that I have heard, when everybody watched Baby Reindeer, we were just flabbergasted. We couldn't believe, we haven't seen things like this before. So it was just shocking, and it definitely started conversations. Now, every other TV, drama, Netflix series, BBC series, anything that you watch typically includes some kind of woman violation, and I don't see the same conversations being started. There's a brief, oh yeah, that was awful, and that's pretty much it. So I feel like maybe we should trial moving away from watching oppression of the same group over and over again, because it gets to the point where we just expect it. And then that then has an impact on how we carry ourselves in our everyday life. We expect to be violated. We expect to be downtrodden. And then it happens. And I was also listening to a episode on the Lou with the Roo podcast. As you can see, I take podcasting very seriously. Like, I go and listen to other podcasts. I do my homework. So just a little nugget for anyone who is wanting to start a podcast or an aspiring podcaster. You got to do your homework. You got to listen to other podcasts to know how you want yours to sound and the kind of stuff you want yours to include. Anyway, I digress. So this episode with Louis Theroux, his guest was Germaine Greer, and she's a very outspoken, self-proclaimed feminist woman. And she was saying how she thinks that marriage is hell and absolute punishment for women and nobody should do it. She doesn't understand why gay marriage has been so fought for, because people shouldn't want to get married, period. And she was saying that she had quite controversial views about the Me Too movement. She felt like it was a breeding ground for women to be more victimised and to have more of a victim culture. I don't agree with that at all, like not one piece of me. But I do agree with what she says about a sentiment of how we do need to start taking action and not just accepting things that happen to us. And I believe the first way to do that is through conversation. It's through normalising the conversation of these things. It's through telling people what has happened to us. That's number one. Tell people what's happened to you and go and seek the help that you need. You may not know what the help that you need is, but I'm pretty sure if you tell people, people can advise you on what help you need. And I think part of victim mentality, which is so strange, is this thing of, this has happened to me, there's nothing I can do about it, so I'm going to carry on. And that would be fine if there was no impact or no repercussions to that, but there are. And the repercussions are that you can't move past a certain point in your life and you can't move past a certain perspective. So in a sense, that whole I'm just going to pull up my trousers and carry on perspective that a lot of us share just encourages victim mentality. So it's like, even if we're trying to do the opposite of being a victim by not talking about it and not paying attention to this, the effect that it has on us does make us more of a victim, in short. And that's what I wanted to leave you with. That's the sentiment I wanted today. Yes, it's quite heavy, but guess what? It's only 10 minutes, so everything should be fine. Also, in other news, straight after you've listened to this, I know you feel like I've just wet your beak and done nothing else. Don't worry. I went on the Pennies to Pounds podcast. Pennies to Pounds podcast is hosted by Kia, who's Series 7 guest, and I highly recommend you listen to Series 7, obviously, but I also recommend that you listen to the Pennies to Pounds podcast and go and subscribe right now. And the most recent episode is featuring me. The depends on when you listen to this. If you listen to this when this comes out, the most recent episode features me. And I'm speaking all things money, obviously, salary transparency, how to approach finances with your partner, and how to maneuver when you have big life changes, things like maternity leave and pregnancy in the corporate world from a salary and money perspective. So please check it out. Please continue to support as you're doing. And let me know how you find this. How are you finding the visuals? Are you happy? Are you glad that this is now on YouTube and Spotify? And on a Sunday, I put a bit of concealer on. Is that making you happy? Let me know, and I will see you next week. Bye.